Okay, so I've had a lot of people come up to me lately and ask me this specific question, which is, hey George, why should I hire a commission-based DM setter and give them a percentage and obviously pay them significantly more money than just taking the easy route and hiring a Filipino-based virtual assistant $3 to $4 an hour and just doing DM setting that way? Like what? Like what's the difference? Why do I need to fork out commission on top of what I'm already paying my sales team? And in this video, I'm going to put an end to that discussion and to that conversation, basically comparing the two. So you know exactly if you were to go down the path of virtual assistant, you're going to know exactly what you're going to get, the pros and the cons. And then if you were to go down the path of a commission-based DM setter, the pros, the cons, again, you know exactly what you're gonna get. So that being said, I have my Matterboard pulled up here on my computer. Let's dive in and let's compare the two. Cool, so you got two options. You either go to $3 an hour Filipino VA, or you hire a commission-based DM setter, and you're in a position where you either don't understand why you would pay commission to someone, or you just want to like see the difference between like, why would I give out a commission, you know, and just pay significantly more money when I could get the quote unquote the same work done for an hourly rate by outsourcing to someone over in the Philippines or in South America or, you know, in Eastern Europe and so on and so forth. That just does very basic virtual assistant type of work. Okay, so the first thing here, it's obviously super cheap, right? $3 an hour, 8 hours a day, that's 24 bucks a day. That's probably less than $800 a month, right? I can even go as far as paying people $4, $5 an hour. And then I think all the way up at $5 an hour, it works out to about $800 a month. Obviously very, very cheap. You could hire multiple people, you know, you can have 3, 4, 5 maybe people, and you could only pay a couple of low $1,000 a month. So very, very convenient, very cheap. So that's a pro, right? That you're not getting with a commission-based DM setter. Another pro is it's very easy to recruit. Unlike a commission-based DM setter where it's going to be harder to recruit, you need to do a lot of digging, you need to like really vet them and make sure they're good. Those virtual assistants are going to be very easy to recruit because the expectation of their work is going to be very SOP'd, very systematized, very robotic, right? So that's obviously going to be significantly easier to recruit someone that just needs to click buttons and not have to do or come up with a lot of their own ideas. And then the third pro here is they can just work off a very simple SOP. So you can have an SOP for, you know, DMing people, obviously, that's like, hey, whenever a new lead comes in, just say this templatized message, copy paste it. And then if they say this, then say that, right? You can basically work the script off of if this, then that logic. It becomes very easy to follow. Now, are you going to sacrifice likely some of the conversions that you might be getting? Probably yes. We're going to discuss about that in the cons here in a second. But that's about it with the pros, right? So they're super cheap, they're very easy to recruit, and they can just work off of very simple SOPs. You don't really need to spend a lot of time, you know, putting together SOPs and workflows. So that's pretty much it when it comes to the pros. Okay, so as you can see, there's quite a lot of cons. So the first one is obviously they're going to be very robotized, right? You can't expect them to have nuance and depth as you would, you know, with an emotionally intelligent, like trained actual salesperson. Everything's going to be very, very robotized. The second thing is you're always going to micromanage them. They always need micromanagers. Like, hey, did you clock in? Did you clock out? Did you put this many hours? Did you log them into the tracker? Did you update the CRM? Did you put those messages here? Show me this, show me that. Are you sending the right messages in the DMs? Are you following up with everyone? So like you constantly need to be on top of them. And because their work is like very checklist style and they're just being paid a salary and their income isn't tied to their performance, then they're just gonna pretty much always or almost always do the bare minimum and just leave it at that. And that leaves you with a lot of micromanagement that you need to do. The third thing here, and probably the worst, is you're always gonna be in a constant fear that they will hurt your brand, that they will hurt your reputation, especially if you have a stronger brand and you really care a lot about that. You wanna be super careful here because literally it's like the first impression principles, right? So like if you're starting to engage your audience and then the first impression that you give is like, yeah, this person is definitely not themselves in the DMs, there's someone else just talking on their behalf. Like you really don't want to have, right? You really don't want your leads, especially when you've spent years trying to build your personal brand, you really don't want them to feel that way. The other thing is for bigger companies is they can't really integrate into team culture. If you've tried hiring VAs in the past, especially for like admin, ops roles, you know that you can't really fully integrate them into the team culture. And that's typically, you know, something that companies are constantly dealing with that are trying to take down or go down this approach. The other thing here is exactly what I said above with like the fear that they will hurt your brand. That fear comes from the fact that like, you know, deep down that they can't really sound like you in the DMs. And like, sure, like, is there going to be the 1 in a million rock star that's going to completely knock it out? Like, sure, but it's like, are you recruiting for the 1 in a million and the $3 an hour salary? Like, probably not, you know what I mean? It applies for $5 an hour as well, by the way. It's the same principle. You know, like, chances are you're probably not going to get that person and they're really like not going to be able to sound like you in the DMs. And when they can't sound like you, then your conversion is going to be significantly lower because the leads on the front end in your content, in your stories, they see one person, and then when they have conversations with you in the DMs, they feel a different vibe. They feel like it's a different person because the person they have in the DMs cannot represent you, cannot speak like you. So there's a discrepancy in the energy from the content and in the energy that people are receiving or experiencing in the DM conversation that you have with them, or that this person for that matter would have with them. That's not really something that you want to do, especially again when you have a very, very strong and big audience. And then last but not least, the last one here is US people can tell, chances are you're selling to the US market, right? So US people, they can just tell that they're speaking to a non-American, they can just tell they're speaking to a non-native, just because the way they talk, like they just have a harder time kind of like understanding the American culture, integrating with that. So that's something that we found time. It wasn't the first thing that came up. An additional additional thing to consider here, that like US people are pretty much almost always gonna know. It's a cheap solution. Is it the best? I'll let you be the judge of that. If this would have been the best solution, I probably wouldn't have a company right now. But nonetheless, let's move forward with the DM setter and talk about the pros and the cons. So here for the DM setter, I'm actually going to talk about the cons first because there's not as many, right? So the cons are it's going to cost your business more, right? We typically give out like a $500 to $800 base pay. If the companies are making typically below 80 to 100,000 a month, that's the procedure that we have there, and then we give them an additional percentage on top of that. That varies anywhere between 3 to 7%, but the typical industry standard is 5%, as you may or may not already know. It's obviously going to cost your business significantly more. That's one thing, right? The second thing is it's harder to recruit quality. So a lot of the people, again, I wouldn't have a business if this wasn't the case. A lot of the people that are trying DM setters, or a lot of people that have tried DM setters in the past and gave up on it, is because the quality of the DM setters that they were getting, which is trash. Like, it's very hard to recruit competent people and put them in this seat and just have them kind of like manage themselves or just be self-sufficient, again, without needing a lot of hand-holding. But the key here is when you get the right person on board, you're just going to skyrocket. Third con here is you're going to need more advanced workflow. So you can't just have an SOP that's based off on if this then that, because the reality is DM conversations or just sales conversations in general, whether you're talking about a DM conversation, an over the phone conversation, a sales call, they have nuance and depth, and that cannot be documented if this then that logic. It cannot be memorized. It doesn't work like that. So because you're not going to have this very basic type of logic here, again, you're going to need more advanced workflows, more advanced training, more advanced management. You're going to need to be more hands-on and again treat it as an actual department, as an actual sales function of your business, rather than just like some people floating in the air with a couple of SOPs and then like they just do their thing, right? Like this is not how you're going to make the most out of DM setters. Just like you have, for example, for your sales team right now, all the workflows, all the SOPs in place, all the different trainings that your manager or maybe even yourself are doing right now with your sales team. You're going to have the same for your DM setter team, right? If you'd expect them to perform at a similar level to your sales team or your phone setting. So that's pretty much it about the cons here for the DM setters. If you have any other cons that you've experienced yourself in the past or that you've seen other people go through, I'd love to see them in the comments down below. Okay, now I'm going to cover the pros of getting a commission-based DM setter because there's significantly more pros as you would expect when you go down this approach. And after I compare this and after I finish this, then I'll give you the thought process that you need to implement if you want to go down the DM setter route and you want this to be successful and where a lot of people go wrong. So stay tuned. I'm going to get to that in a couple of minutes here. The first one is they have high EQ. Like they can actually have a conversation thinking for themselves on their own feet without having to follow a if this then that or a copy-paste message. So they have high emotional intelligence. The second thing that's kind of a byproduct of that is they can build proper human connection with your leads, right? Which is very, very important. Again, they see one person in the marketing. If the vibe is completely different in the DMs, you're going to have a hard time converting people because it's just going to cause a confusion. Like people feel the energy, like humans are humans, right? You've been following their content, you've been watching some of their videos, you know kind of how that person speaks and thinks and talks, and then you message them and then you think you're having a DM conversation with them, or like that, at least that's the expectation they're going into when you're messaging them, but then the vibe in the DMs is completely different, the word tracks, the way that person talks is completely different than what you've seen in the content. That creates a big kind of like question mark, that creates a lot of confusion, and confused leads don't buy, and confused leads, not only they don't buy, but they don't move forward in the funnel, so keep that in mind. Third thing here, which is also a byproduct of them having a higher EQ, is they can talk and sound exactly like you. So they're no longer robotized, which is, kind of piggyback what I just said here a couple of seconds ago. Now, also because they're being paid a commission, they are performance driven. They're driven by performance. Their income isn't just, I got to clock in, I got to clock out, I just got to put 8 hours on the clock, I'm going to make my little $40 and then I'll just chill. Right? Like that's not the kind of person they want in a sales role. Like you wouldn't pay your closers a base pay. Like you wouldn't pay your closers $50 for each call taken or for each slot available in their calendar, would you? Right? So you probably wouldn't do that. You know what I'm saying? So that the outcome is tied to their income. That's what this does right here. So the more work they put in and the better they get at their work, the more money they're going to make, which a lot of those people are going to be very money motivated. That's how I was 3.5 years ago when I first got started. Now, the next really cool thing here is they can integrate into the team culture. They can become a part of the sales department. They can join all of your company meetings, all the sales team trainings. They can really be part of that. Like they can really be part of like the sales unit or the sales department of your company. They can integrate very, very well, build personal relationships with other people in your company, with your closers and so on, because they kind of operate in the same wavelength, if that makes sense. And then the last thing, and again, this is heavily dependent on the quality of the people that you get on board to do this for you. But typically, when you get the right person on board, and US people can tell that they're speaking to a rep, especially if you hire someone US based, but not only, right? We don't only hire people from the US, we hire people from all over the world. And we have our own trainings that we take them through so that they can talk and sound exactly like we need them to for each of the offers or each of the business owners that we're working with and that we're representing in the DM. That's about it for the pros and cons. Now I just want to take a quick second and kind of just compare the results down here. $3 an hour VA, just a quick recap. They're super cheap, very easy to recruit. They work off of simple SOPs, but the problem is they're very robotized. They can't really integrate into team culture. US people can tell they're not an American, and then like you're always going to feel like you have to micromanage them or that you can't trust to properly represent your brand. And as a result of that, you're going to see lower conversions in conversations. Why is that? Like, what does that happen? Because there's lower trust for all the reasons that I just talked about here, and there's less depth in the conversation because you're following the very like copy-paste SOP logic, which leads to less calls booked and less money made for you, which is not great, right? Sure, you're saving money on this, but it's like the true cost that you're paying is the money that you could have made when you do it the right way by getting a DM setter on board, which obviously the cons is it's going to cost your business more. But when you put it into perspective, it's not really a con because they're also going to make your business more considering that you get the right people on board, which is, this is really a con here because it's harder to recruit the right people. And then you're also going to need more advanced workflows. So you're going to need to know what the hell you're doing to actually build this department and make, a couple $100,000 a month from it. Pros, I'm not going to go into it again. You can read them on the screen here. But as a result, if you go down the DM setter route or the DM department route, you're going to see higher conversions in conversations. Why is that? Because you're going to create more trust, people are going to have higher compliance, and you're going to have more depth in your conversation that again obviously leads to higher conversions, which is going to lead to more calls booked and then more money made for you. Funny how that works, right? Now remember I told you a couple of minutes ago I'm going to show you the mindset thing, or like kind of like the wrong assumption that people have when they're building out departments or when they're thinking or considering about hiring DM setters, hiring VAs, and kind of how they go about it. And to be frank, I'm going to try and illustrate it here, but what the majority of people do is they have a company that's somewhat successful. They're making a couple $100,000 a month, or low six figures, high six figures, doesn't really matter. It could be at any point in business here as long as you have an audience and you're considering about doing something like this. And where a lot of those people go wrong is they look at the DM department and they think like, yeah, this is the bottom of the barrel. Nobody gives a fuck about this department. Like nobody cares. They'll just hire some overseas people, pay them $3 an hour. Nobody's gonna look at them. Nobody's gonna manage them. And like we're just gonna call it a day and like we're just gonna try and do DMs, right? And then it doesn't fucking work. And they say, oh yeah, DM doesn't work for me. Look at what you've done. Did you expect it to work? Because like if you told me you actually expect it to work, I would just say you'd be crazy if you expected that to work, right? So people have their like sales manager, they have their closing team, they have their marketing team, they have everyone here like the top of the org chart, right? But then they try and build a DM department. They just put it right down at the bottom with like the ops and admin people. I never understood this logic, and this was a big problem when I first got into the space because everyone was treating DM setters like shit, and no one was treating DM setters as an actual like function of the business, as a sales unit, as a department of the business. No one was doing this. Everyone was just treating them as bottom of the barrel. Nobody cares about those people. We're just gonna treat them like shit, and we're just gonna see if they can produce something. And then obviously they would never produce anything. And then people would say DM doesn't work. Like treat them as an actual department that reports to you or your sales manager if you have one, and treat it as a sales function of your business. And sure, you're gonna have to dedicate more resources, more money, more time, more workflows, more team, like everything to build this out into a proper department. But the results that you're gonna get from it are gonna be astounding, especially if you have an audience right now that you're dropping the ball on, that you're not monetizing properly. The amount of money that you can make with a proper DM department in place, with a proper DM team in place. And not only that, but the amount of profit that you could have on that, because again, if you have an audience, you don't really have to spend money on marketing to squeeze this cash from the audience. You just gotta give a measly couple percent to a DM setter, right? To someone that can run and build that team for you, or even yourself if you're gonna do it in-house. But the results that you're gonna get from this are gonna be so much better if you just stop treating this department as like it doesn't fucking exist and it doesn't matter. Because it does, and it can make you so much money. In fact, I didn't introduce myself at the beginning of the video, but if you don't know me yet, I've generated in the last 3.5 years over $50 million through DM setters that I've trained, hired, and managed for a bunch of big offers out, like Jeremy Miner, Dr. Pompa, Paul Hilsey, Razvan Parashiv, and many others. You can go on my website. I run this company called DMsetting.com, and this is pretty much what we do. We build departments, we build DM departments. This is how this company was born, in fact, because people were just treating DM setters like shit, and I saw an opportunity. I was a really good DM setter myself. I saw an opportunity in this space where like no one was taking this department seriously, and that's how this company was born, and this is how we've generated tens of millions of dollars for our clients since then. I highly encourage you to like start treating it as an actual department, as an actual sales function of your business. Despite the fact that in the beginning it might feel like it's gonna cost you more, reality is long term. If you go down this path right here, you're gonna pay so much more in ignorance tax for not doing this. So I'm gonna leave you with that. If you wanna learn more about what working with me and my team would look like, there's gonna be a link somewhere in the description, and see you next time.